It's mostly related to that. All right. Let's see here. It looks like it's real. I'm going to step over here because I will definitely kill myself with that cord. So I've got a remote here because I'm like really a quirky speaker. Cool. All right. Everybody can see? Everybody can hear? Yes. Good. Can you see my slides? Oh, it's in real life. It's in person. That's cool. All right, great. Well, I guess only you need this because I'm actually standing in front of it, so that works. Yeah, so I'm Jesse, and thank you for letting me come and talk. A really cool community. I've been watching the WhatsApp group and all the live stream stuff. I've had to do a bunch of other work things this week. I've had serious FOMO the whole week. It sounds like it's been really amazing. So really cool stuff. I'm talking about back-to-front type safety for 10x DX. And a little bit about me, so developer at Hasira, and I've got a really, really wide background from agriculture to APIs. Basically that means I can't be bored. It's actually a physical disability, so if you have any questions, you want to talk to me about anything, let me know. I've got 4 kids, so there's always that we could talk about. I love collecting kettlebells, and I do actually distill my own schnapps, because I live in Germany, so whatever you want to talk about. I've been a GraphQL advocate for about 6 years now, and I'm kind of a budding Postgres fanboy, so if you have any questions on that, we can talk about everything. A little bit about who I work for, Hasira. Anybody here has heard of Hasira? I know you have. Good, very good. Anybody using Hasira? Yes, you're my friend. All right, good. So that's really great. But basically what we do is we do instant GraphQL on your data. And we have a lot of other functionalities that we kind of extend for you, so event triggers, actions, REST connectors, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to make this a vendor talk, and there will be a little demo about it later on. We support a lot of databases, but like I said, I'm not actually going to be going too hard on Postgres today. Actually, I am. Sorry. So what this talk is actually not about, this is not a GraphQL talk. GraphQL is featured, but it's not a GraphQL talk. It's not even actually a TypeScript talk. This is going to be a more high level where I'm making the case for generated types. I'm making the case for leaning in on boring tech, and I'm making the case for letting the database be your guide. I should warn you, there's hot takes in here. So, find me later after I have a beer in my hand, and we can totally talk about everything you hate about my talk. But I'm hoping to not actually step on anybody's favorite puppies today. I'm wanting to make sure we have friends, but there's some concepts here that are probably new or at least different. So generated types, what do I actually mean with that? I just love this. I actually had a Pomeranian growing up. Isn't that fun? Yeah. But this is actually, all these images are generated by Midjourney, so actually fantastic stuff. So if you just want to see the images, that's also fine with this talk today. But what I'm talking about for generated types is you have basically a model at the top level, right? And then you have some sort of a common data type or an AST or an abstraction in the middle that you're then going to be able to generate your types into, yeah? And so we're going to have a look at kind of what the workflow then is for that, and that's when you have sort of a data migration would then have followed by a generation step of some kind, and then you have your types come out the other side of it. So everybody kind of tracking roughly with this flow? Some of you are probably thinking already, this is a bad idea, don't do it. But we're going to talk about why that's maybe okay. But to do that, we first need to talk about the 2 800-pound gorillas in the room. If you're not familiar with American colloquialism, we call really bad ideas in the room gorillas, specifically 800-pound gorillas. But we're going to talk about 2 of them today. And the first one is, every time you make a data change, you're going to break your builds, all of your builds. And the second big bad problem with that is mapping APIs to data models is some people don't like that. And we're going to talk about why maybe that's okay. But we need to talk about what these issues actually are. So first, the first BHG, big hairy gorilla, is breaking builds. And by the way, Midjourney, come on, this is insane, right? This is just insane. So the first big issue is changes to the model have direct downstream impact. Anytime you want to make a change to your data model, you're going to break everything that flows from your data model. And here's some of the counterpoints to that, is that improper deprecation always breaks stuff. So anytime you make changes to that, was going to actually either impact your API layer a step higher, or it's going to actually impact a step further down, which is going to be if you're consuming an API that's generated from your data layer. A cleaner original model means less breaking changes later overall. So if you actually are starting with generated API interfaces and you start with a better data model, hopefully that will actually lead to less breaking changes down the road. And that's usually because breaking changes may indicate that you have a need for more submodules. Specifically, if you're familiar with domain-driven development, or domain-driven design, that you actually potentially need to introduce new types, not necessarily be extending or changing your existing primary types in your data model. Is everybody tracking with these parts so far? I can double click on any of these if you want. I hate that term so much, double clicking on ideas. Oh, such a Microsoft thing. Okay, anyways, we're going to go ahead and keep going. BHG number 2, the big hairy gorilla number 2, is that mapping APIs to data models is a bad idea. Like, you've heard about this. Like, if anybody here is like an older developer, they're thinking, dude, this has been an anti-pattern longer than you've been alive, man. Like, nobody does this. So mapping APIs to data models is bad, right? Well, I have thoughts on that. So first one, data models these are some of the arguments, right? Data models should be designed around storage, not semantics. That's fair. Like, we've been there, we've been around. So like, you should be designing your data around how to store it. Other ones, exposing implementation details is a security risk. We've heard the stories or been the cause of the stories. And semantic database design leads to over-normalized data sets, which causes network chatter. This is the idea of a whole bunch of requests, firing back and forth because you have to do a lot of joins, or you're getting IDs and then you're fetching all the data and back and forth. Somebody heard GraphQL in there. Yeah. It's foreshadowing, everybody. All right, so we have data models should not be designed around storage, not semantics. I would argue storage should be chosen around access patterns, which is dictated by data types. So your data should actually be stored in a way that is efficiently accessed, not worried about actually the storage specifically. Your storage and data access you need go hand in hand, which then implicates the API that you're going to access it from. Plus, performant access is a transport problem, not actually a storage problem. The second point there is exposing implementation details is a security risk, and exposing implementation details can be a security risk, and there are enough tools to prevent a WASPian excessive data exposure. Start everything locked down, you're only going to expose things that are actually important or needed. And then the last piece is semantic database design leads to over-normalized data sets or network chatter, which everybody knows the answer to. Use GraphQL, right? So this is the idea that if you actually do have a lot of normalized data sets and very relational data that you're trying to query from, you can actually request all of that in a single request as opposed to having that network chatter, which is actually a real problem if you are doing a whole lot of requests. Like even just, what's up with like the whole 5G like network connectivity in London? Like, I mean, like 2 requests go through and then all of a sudden 5G's like, nah, I'm tired, man. Like I did that really fast though. The first 2 are really fast, yeah. So I don't get it. 5G in London's really slow. So yes, I am in fact, I'm telling you to expose your data models to APIs. Kinda. So let's actually talk about why and how we can actually mitigate some of these issues. And it's actually focused around leaning in on boring tech. This is my favorite Midjourney image to date. Like, just tweet me and I will give it to you for free. This is an amazing image. All right, so what we're going to talk about is that your relational database managers probably already speak types, that your database probably supports type checking out of the box, and that you shouldn't really reinvent the wheel. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. That's a Postgres joke. Anybody? No? Okay. All right, good. Thank you, Ken. All right, so we got the AIFRF, elephant in room fact. Postgres schemas are already typed. If you haven't, anybody here use Postgres? Okay, that's everybody almost. That's great. And then elephant in the room fact number 2 is that Postgres supports data constraints already on its own. We're getting into things that we actually want for API design. We want strong types. We want to have constraints. And then the third point is that the Postgres type system is actually very robust. Like, what do I mean by robust? You can put a whole bunch of attributes in JSON-B. You can use all kinds of taxonomies and L trees. You can use big ints, little ints, minus ints if you have a cryptocurrency account. You can do all kinds of data store types if you want. It's a really powerful way to build. So, cool, you're thinking right now, right? I've got an ORM for that. And I am friends with ORM producers in the room, so I want to be careful here. In my case here, I would say, have you tried debugging exception U123 fiddly D? I do not like getting unique identifiers on my constraint violations. I like to see what the database provides a more descriptive violation constraint, because that's easier to debug. So that's my personal, that's the hottest take that I probably have tonight. So what I'm arguing here, and I think is a really good pattern, and this is going to be how we talk about generated types, is that you want to let the data be your guide. So data guide principle, DGP, this is the last one. I've been around sales guys all week, and they just there's too many acronyms, I just had to get on the fun. So we have DGP1, is that data-driven APIs enable domain experts. What I love about this is that when you talk about the data model, it's helping you build better applications. This is actually a really interesting quote from a customer of ours who does genetic sequencing. They take a bunch of really random data sets, put it into a GraphQL API, but they're talking about hiring. They're saying, we can ask, how's your genomic sequencing knowledge? And they'll get a good candidate, and they'll ask, and how's your Python code? And it's really difficult to get somebody that can do both of those. And so what they're saying is that when they create these domain-driven APIs, then the people who have to actually create the models are also API enablers. They're able to understand the API they're designing because they get the domain. They get the understanding of what it is they're actually creating. And it really comes down to then just focusing on solving meaningful problems. So if you're trying to be building a really fancy API, you're not really solving the problem of how do I do home food delivery during the pandemic. You're not really solving how do I actually do diabetes tracking for 5-year-olds specifically. Try to solve the meaningful problems through data models as opposed to trying to get clever with the API design. And so pick the right database that supports the right model for your product, and then generate as much as you can from there. So an example of kind of how Hasira sort of goes about solving that problem, you have again the idea of the model to the common data type, which then produces types. So Hasira sort of sits then in the middle of this, where when you're talking to the RDBMS, you have a SQL AST that it generates in between, so it's able to communicate to different sort of data sources, and then down to the actual type generation, you have GraphQL. So you use 2 different common data structures to be able to generate our types, either down at the types level or actually up to the relational types for the database. And so I think the easiest way, though, is to explain this through a demo. I wasn't sure how much time I actually had. Do I have time? Very cool. Has anybody done a ChatGPT demo already during the conferences? No? We're going to see some pretty weird stuff here. Okay, cool. I'm excited. This stuff blows my mind. I'm a talker, so I don't really know code very well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually do some audience participation. I need like a noun, like some topic.
Elephant.
Elephants. Yes. And I need a business model, like e-commerce or something like that. Business model.
Transportation.
What's that?
A circus pop-up.
A circus pop-up.
Store, yeah.
A circus pop-up store. You buying circuses, or what are you?
You buy elephants.
What's that?
Tickets, I think, for my circus pop-up store.
Okay, a pop-up store. Are the elephants going to be like running the store, or are the elephants going to be what you go see?
They're what you go see.
We're going to go see it. So a ticket sale, a ticket store for seeing elephants in the circus. Okay, so we're going to ask ChatGPT here to give us a hand. I'm going to see if I can put this down for a second. You probably have to give a recording, right? I can't type with one hand, so I'll have to do this. You guys can hear me. I don't know if the mic can hear me very well, but what we're going to do is ask ChatGPT to give us...
Zoom in a bit so we can
Zoom in a bit, okay.
Yeah.
All right, see what we can do here. We're going to ask ChatGPT to create a Postgres schema for a ticket pop-up store for seeing elephant zoo shows. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so, all right, ChatGPT, here we go. Let's see what it gives us. We've got some SQL statements coming in. So naturally, we have zoo shows, and we have tickets. This is a pretty lean data model, I gotta actually say. That's not bad. Do we believe it? So we've got elephant zoo shows. We have the date. We have the capacity. We have the price. That's quite interesting. We have the tickets. I think our data model is a little bit lean here. We probably need to add something else to it. Should we add? What's that? Right. What are we supposed to add to the model? You're the business model guy.
I mean, we need some kind of ordering, isn't it? Like order.
Yeah, they have the tickets, so we could just buy directly, but let's go ahead and see if we can add an orders primitive. Zoom in again. Yep, sorry, here we go again. So we have the schema here. So we have shows and we have tickets. You know what, let's ask it real quick if we can get a quick chart for us to kind of visualize this real fast. We're going to go, let's say, create a mermaid chart from the schema. Let's see what we get. Okay, so there we got a nice little ER diagram that we can kind of see some of the relations a bit more. If we drop that in GitHub, we'd actually have our documentation halfway done for this model. Let's go ahead and add in the request for add a table for ticket orders. I'm going to name it that way because if you know Postgres and you try putting in orders as a table name, you're in for a bad time. So we're going to say a table for ticket orders on the schema. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we've got the elephant zoo shows. We have the tickets, and we're going to be getting in the ticket orders. That seems to make sense. So we're going to go ahead, and we got some order items. So it's kind of giving us some more realistic concepts here. I think that's good enough for the data model because I don't want to take up the entire evening because you can definitely go down a rabbit hole when it comes to this stuff. What I'm going to do is hop over into the Hasira interface. And if you haven't seen Hasira before, what it basically does is it gives you a console. I'm going to zoom in on this so we can actually see this here a little bit better. It gives you a console where we're able to interact with the database, be able to see what the GraphQL inference is from our underlying types. I'm going to go to SQL here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete my last fake data example. And we're going to go ahead and paste in this schema here and just see if we actually get lucky enough for a feeling lucky button on inserting this as is, and we'll have a Postgres database running under the hood. Come on, big money. SQL executed, very good. So we actually have a database that is currently running underneath the elephant zoo schema on Postgres. So what Hasira is going to do now is it says, hey, I understand your database. I'm going to go ahead and ask you, do you want to track the types that are in this database? And we say, yes, we do. We go ahead and track those. And when I do that, it sees my foreign keys. And it says, well, GraphQL kind of likes relationships. Do you want us to track those? I say, yes, I do. And now we have a startup. We need funding. Who's going to fund this? No, so we have an actual product now where we have the zoos, we have tickets, and we can actually look at our API here and see that we have a functioning, oh, that was a beer example. Sorry. Anyways, we have our zoo here. Let's go ahead and have a look to see if we got zoo shows. What else do we have on there? We have, let's go ahead and actually, somebody worked really hard for this Explorer feature. Let's use it. So we've got the zoo shows. We have tickets. We have customer name. We have all that kind of stuff. And you know what's really insane is I'm just going to show you just to kind of also appreciate how much effort goes into this stuff. If we were to go back to ChatGPT, I'm not going to do this, but if we were to say create 10 fake tickets, 10 fake orders and order items, then you'll actually see like really crazy examples where it just like generates those things for you automatically. I think that's just fantastic. It's really good for fake data. We're not going to insert this, but I want to just prove the example of the schema generation for types. And so we have the actual API. We can see GraphQL has understood our database, and we have everything connected. What we need to do now is get this into a types that our front end can use. 5 minutes? We got it. What's that?
Can you zoom in a bit?
Zoom in a bit? Yeah, you bet. So we can see that we actually have GraphQL has discovered this. The nice thing about the introspection is we can prove that this is actually a functioning type system, because otherwise it wouldn't work. We'd get a bunch of red squigglies. So we have our types working here inside of Hasira. I'm going to go ahead and go now to my code editor here. And not this one. I'm going to open up my other one, which I think is closed down. So let's open it up. I've been running a little ragged the last couple days. All right, we got the front to back project here. And we have a really basic GraphQL Codegen defined here, where we have essentially the Codegen config is pointed to just my endpoint here, right? So if you haven't seen GraphQL Codegen, it's just a great tool for JavaScript developers that allows you to point to an endpoint. This is my locally running one, v1 GraphQL. And it's just saying I want to go ahead and generate types and an introspection file from that API, right? So Hasira sitting in the middle, giving me the schema. Is it bigger? Thank you. Like I said, it's been a week. All right. Is that big? Is it big enough? Anybody need it bigger? A little bigger? One more? Okay, how's that? All right, very good. You can actually drop out the side piece here. We don't need that. So we're going to go ahead and generate our types from our API that we just created from ChatGPT. So we're going to hop down here and tell it to use Codegen. Go look at my file, do an introspection query, see all the types, and give us a nice type library to work with locally. So we're going to go ahead and say yarn Codegen. I hope that's what I had it set up as. I think it is correct. Failed. And we're going to go ahead and delete the documents here, because I don't have this. We're just going to get the introspection. Let's go ahead and do that. Yarn Codegen. Very good. We got types. They haven't looked inside of the generated file here. We go to source, generated, GraphQL. This is our generated output. Elephant zoo shows, ticket order items, all the types we would need to be able to build a very robust back-to-front type safety using the data model as our guide, and I guess ChatGPT as our sensei. So that's all I have for this talk. There's probably a lot of hot takes you want to talk about in this. If you want to, find me afterwards, and I would love to talk more about it.